In this tutorial, I'm going to be walking you through the OpenProj project management application. So the first thing you need to do is find OpenProj. Note that there is another application called OpenProject, but that's not the one I'm demonstrating here. It's OpenProj, and you can find it here at sourceforge.net. Download it. It's got Windows, BSD, Mac and Linux versions, and I'm running the Mac version. Now when you install it, there are two things that might stop you from running it. One is that it needs the Java runtime. So you may or may not have any Java installed on your system preferences. You may be able to check. So if you try to run OpenProj and it says that it's so if you install it, it'll install, and if you double click on it and it says requires the Java 6 JRE, the Java Runtime Environment, you can click on the button that says More Info and it will take you to a site where you can download the Java Runtime. It's actually designed with an older version of JRE, so it will direct you to the JRE 6 legacy. As I'm recording, the current Java Runtime is JRE 8. But I recommend the 6 has no problems at all running OpenProj. Even the 8 probably is okay, but I haven't tested that on all configurations. So the other thing that could stop you from running it is, depending on the settings on your laptop, it may say that it can't open it because it didn't come from the iStore. It's not from that source. To get across over that, instead of double clicking to try and open it, do a right click and do open, and that will give you a choice. Do you want to run this software? It warns you, and it also says if you say yes, you do want to run it, then it will always be runnable. It will be a trusted app on this laptop, on this computer. So do that the first time, do open, say yes, I want to run it, and then after that first time you'll be able to double click it. So that's just two things that you need to know before you install OpenProj. You need the Java runtime environment, and you need to give your laptop permission to run it. Okay, so once we're in OpenProj, let's create a new project, and I'm going to call this, because we're doing a VR virtual reality project, I'm going to call this my VRProj project, and I'll use today's date as a start date. And now it puts us into like a work breakdown view here with a Gantt view generated on the side here. Now we'll come to the Gantt view in a moment. I just want to start with putting in some tasks. So the first task that we wanted to do was a project charter. So we'll say do project charter, and because it's a work breakdown, we try and put a verb in with each one. Produce project plan. Now, some of the things we're doing in here, we're going to well, let's say after that we do the weekly reports. Produce reports. Then we need to do some VR, so research VR, develop VR experience, and now then we have to do in my students, the deliverables are a video tutorial on how they did it, produce video tut. They have to produce a poster saying what project management tools they used, produce poster, and they have to participate in a college, in a VR exhibition that we're going to run at the end of the semester. So I'll just say do exhibition. The last thing we'll do then is close the project. Okay, so that's what we would call, you would do a mind map first probably and come up with these and develop these ideas. But that's what I would call my level 1 tasks. We'll go into breaking these down. The whole work breakdown structure breaks these down into smaller tasks. But let's start with these tasks. Now, I want to just, as well as putting in tasks, what's really important here is understanding predecessors for tasks. For example, the first thing I'm going to do is a project charter to answer the big questions, and then produce a project plan which starts to look at the detail. What I'm doing now is part of the project planning, the work breakdown. Now, I don't want to start the project plan until I've finished the project charter. Then I've got the green light and I'm ready to do this. So project charter number 1 is a predecessor. This is also called, in PMI framework, this is also called dependencies, but it's the same thing, a predecessor or a dependency. So task 2 has a predecessor of task 1. And you can see I didn't have to move anything across. It's actually changed to look like this. Do this task on Thursday, do this task on Friday. And that's because I've only taken the default of 1 day for each of these tasks. Now let's say I actually wanted to give my team 7 days to do the project charter and 7 days to do the project plan. Now I can see that the Gantt chart is reflecting this. Okay, so the predecessor has done that. Let's look for some other predecessors. Research VR and then develop a VR experience. Well, I'm going to make the research goes first and then we develop our own applications. So I'm going to make, in 5, I'm going to give it a predecessor of 4. Now, produce the video tube, produce the poster, do the exhibition. Actually, do the exhibition, we need to have our VR experience, which was number 5. We also need to have our video tutorial ready to show off. That's 6. And we want to show off our poster then as well. So 7. So now we have these 3, develop the video tube and the poster, all need to be done before we do the exhibition. And for closing, well, there's 2 things we need to do for closing. We need to finish the exhibition and we need to do the final closing report. So the reports need to be finished. That was number 3. So now I have worked out some dependencies. Actually, there's one more dependency I want to put in, which is after we have the plan, we start doing the weekly reports. So I'm going to make 2, produce project plan, a predecessor of 3. Now, that gives me a path here. Do the project charter, produce the project plan, do the weekly reports, and close the project. And what we see here in the second view is a network diagram that shows that more clearly. This then in the red is the critical path. If any of these tasks take longer than we planned, it moves the entire project finish date. These blue ones are not on the critical path. If we take an extra week or a day, then that won't affect the closing, the finishing date of the project. So we have our work breakdown, which we will work more on breaking this level 1 tasks down. We have our Gantt view here. We have our network diagram here. The third part is our resources. And let's say we've got our team member. Let's say we have Amna, Fatima, and Gaia are our team members. Now, when we go back to a task, we can give responsibilities to people. Now, I can give the entire project charter to Amna, and I can type Amna in here, or I can just double-click on the task, and I can see all the information about this task. So under resources, I'm just going to click on the little button here that lists our resources, and I'm going to click on Amna and assign her the responsibility for the project charter. Doesn't mean that she has to do it all, but she is the one kind of managing the project charter. You can see her name here. You can also see on the Gantt chart it puts Amna's name there. So we can do that with all of our tasks here. We can just click through, and let's say the project plan, that's going to be Fatima managing the plan process for the initial plan. Produce the reports. Well, now the team are going to take turns at this, so I'm going to actually assign all 3 to this task of producing the reports. And we're going to break all of these level 1 tasks down anyway. Research VR and so on. When we break these down, we'll give these to different people. So I think it's time to look at breaking down these tasks now. So what we'll do is insert underneath project charter. I'm going to break down the project charter into its parts. So we need to write the scope. We need to, and again, I'm just inserting new tasks. By the way, we have a nice keyboard shortcut here, which is Control K. Is it? Control K. So I can put in a few. So we can write the scope, write justification, write the risk analysis, etc. So all the parts of the project charter we can do. What else do we need? A summary budget and a summary schedule. Okay, so now we can highlight all of these are like level 2 tasks under the project charter. So we can indent them and see how that looks. So now that I've actually broken the task down, instead of just giving the whole project charter to Amna, I think it's probably better to maybe remove Amna from there and actually assign the resources to these level 2 tasks. So let's make Amna in charge of the scope, and let's make Fatima in charge of the justification, and Gaia can do the risk analysis, and so on. And we also, let's be realistic about the time, scope. Let's give 3 days for the scope statement, 3 days for the risk analysis for these ones. 3 days, and maybe 7 days for these ones, because it's the same 3 girls that'll be working on it. So that seems fair. So we can now see what's going to take the time, and we can see also that what that's done to our project for the closing. So let's focus for a moment. So I think what you can see there is how the level 1, level 2, let's take something down to a level 3. Let's say research VR. All right, I'm going to put in 2 things that we're going to research. We're going to research VR apps. That'll be part of the research, is looking at apps. We're also going to research 360 cameras. Okay, now those are both part of the research VR, so that's 2 different things that we'll be doing. Now under cameras, Control K, we're going to say research phone panorama. How to do phone panoramas, and the other one will be to research 360 video and work out how that's done. Now both of those are a subset of, they're both 2 types of cameras. So in fact now I've gone down to level 3. Level 1, research VR. Level 2, research VR apps and research 360 cameras, and then 2 types of 360 cameras. So this is how we can do our work breakdown into level 1, level 2, and level 3. By the way, when we have this open, so this is open with all the level 1, the level 2, and the level 3, if we go to the network diagram, we see everything. And it actually gets a bit confusing to see everything. So if you want a nice network view, it might be better to close up some of these and just look at the level 1 tasks in the network diagram. So that's kind of how we would do the work breakdown, the Gantt chart, the network diagram, and the last one that we get automatically from this is a task list. Within this view, we can see what Amna has to do, what Fatima has to do, what Gaia has to do. The last thing is probably looking at whoever's responsible for the Gantt chart, looking at the actual date. So let's say we know that week 12 is going to finish at the end of March. So we can start to say, okay, let's give 3 weeks. 21 days for our research. Let's say both tasks. Now, you can't enter times into a parent. You have to go into the child task and enter time. So 21 days for these 2. Let's say developing the app, again another 2 weeks, 21 days to develop the app. Produce the video tutorial, let's say that's 11 days, that sounds about right. A week for the poster. Do the exhibition, we'll be running that for, say, 2 days. Oh, wait. 2 days. And let's say, yeah, 1 day probably is enough for the closing. So we can then say, okay, if we allow those kind of times, what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that we're going to be finished in the 2nd week of April. Now, that may be too long. Maybe we don't have enough time. So then we start playing with the times to see if we can get them down. We can either, let's say this one here, develop the VR, 21 days. You say, you know what, by the time we've done the research, maybe we don't need 3 weeks, maybe we only need 2 weeks. And so we've shortened that one. You know, will it help if we, you know, finish this a bit quicker? Okay, so by doing this, we're changing the times in our plan to make it fit. So we now know, okay, we can finish this in the last week of March. There's one more thing to, I guess, show you. Okay, so this is our work breakdown structure. We also have a hierarchical view of the work breakdown structure, which, to be honest, I'm not sure I find this as useful, but it's certainly another way of viewing the breakdown of the tasks. So in your project plan, you're required to show things like, and I'm just going to the end of the project charter section here in this groups. So we would start the project plan with probably you know, just a screen grab from OpenProj of the work breakdown, and probably I would expect an introduction here explaining what's happening here and pointing out the main features of the work breakdown. This is then a sort of a Gantt view, and here an introduction explaining the Gantt view and maybe pointing out some of the significant milestones that we see in the schedule. The network diagram view, of course, is where we look at the critical path and try and manage that critical path. And then we have the resource task list, which is generated for us. So I think it's a bit of work setting up the project in OpenProj, but it very quickly generates these different views of the project that we can use to help us with our planning. Now, as well as planning, this is also the main monitoring tool. With each task, we can say how much of it is complete. So here I have the little percentage, and I'm going to say, okay, we've got the scope is done. So that black line through the scope tells me it's done, and I get a green tick here. The justification, well, Fatima has been a bit slow with that, and it's only 1/3 done, and so on. Let's say Gaia's finished the risk analysis, and these 2 tasks are complete, and this task is complete. By the way, we can, and I moved that instead of, let me just put it back, and make it a bit shorter. Okay, we can also go into the task itself, and under general, we can also enter the percentage done. So 100% done, that's fine, and we can close it off. So as these tasks are done, and let's see, okay, it's only the justification, and then Fatima says, yes, I've finished the, where are we? Let's get that percentage cursor. There it is. Fatima says, finally, I finished the justification, and now we see that entire project charter task is done. So we can kind of close that up. We don't need that anymore. Same with the initial project plan. Once that's done and we have that submitted, then we say each task is done 100% and we'll get the green arrow there. So by sort of monitoring each week, at the end of each week, the project manager for that week can look through the plan and take a grab of what's been completed in that week, what's halfway done, partially completed. And so we get a sense of how we're monitoring the project. If we get something like this, where we see that by this end of this week here, we would expect this task, research phone apps, we would expect this to be, at least done to this percentage. If in fact this task is, if this task hasn't been started yet and we're at the end of this week, then it becomes a problem. Well, if this task is only, so the report at the end of this week would say, okay, this is a problem because we haven't made as much progress as we planned, and this task is on the critical path. So, this should ring an alarm bell in the report at the end of this week. The weekly report should say that's a problem and what are we going to do about it. Okay, so I hope that's given you a feel for OpenProj and how we can use it to plan our project and to monitor it.